Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this segment of our lesson. This segment is going to go over the difference between the types of cameras that you can have for this course as required equipment. You can either have a DSLR camera, which stands for digital single lens reflex, or you can have a DSLM camera, which stands for digital single lens mirrorless. A lot of people just refer to them as mirrorless cameras, but I want to be very specific that you need to have a digital single lens mirrorless camera because there's a lot of mirrorless cameras out there, and I want to make sure that you have a mirrorless camera that has a single lens that is interchangeable. So either a digital single lens reflex camera, DSLR, or digital single lens mirrorless camera for this class. So there's a difference between the two. The older technology is DSLR. So this is this here is a DSLR camera, and I'll take a look at that one here. This is a Canon 5D Mark II. You can see 5D right here and Mark II right here. This is one of the older Canon 5Ds. It's from 2006. It is the camera that I shoot almost every image that I capture on, and it's worked really well for me for 14, 15 years now. And it is a digital single lens reflex camera. So it has a single lens. The image or light comes through the lens, hits the mirror that's inside the light tight box of the camera, gets reflected up to a prism that is in this portion of the box, and that prism then reflects the image through the viewfinder, so then I can see it with my eyes. So what I see through the viewfinder with my eyes is exactly the same image that is coming through the lens. So there are cameras out there that are not single lens reflex cameras. They are cameras that use a rangefinder. And what a rangefinder would be a second hole either over here to the side that you put your eye up to and you look through the hole over here, or maybe it's up here right above the lens. And the rangefinder is something that you look through in order to gauge how you need to frame your shot. It's usually okay, it's pretty close, but it's not a professional use camera. The difference is you may be off a little bit, especially on closer images where you're taking close-up shots, and your frame may be off or up, either left or right of what you intended. So with a digital single lens reflex camera, you are looking through the viewfinder and seeing exactly what is coming through the lens every single time. And what single lens reflex cameras do is they take an image through the lens, and the image comes into the light tight box of the camera. It hits this mirror right here, and that mirror then reflects the image up into that prism, and the prism will then reflect the image through the viewfinder. When you decide that you see an image that you want to capture and you are hitting the shutter button, and the shutter button releases the shutter and allows light to hit the sensor, and it also moves the mirror out of the way so that the image can go past the position of the mirror and hit the sensor. So when I hit the shutter, it opens up and reveals the sensor. The sensor is the thing that's reflecting all the nice pretty rainbows. It looks like you maybe have taken too many prescription medications. So that is how a digital single lens reflex camera works. You are taking an image through the lens. The image goes through the lens, hits the mirror, it's reflected up to the prism reflects it out through the viewfinder. Then when you hit the shutter button, it moves the mirror out of the way and opens the shutter and allows your image to go through and hit the sensor in the back of the camera. So this is a full frame camera. So there are different types of cameras out there. The the Canon 5D Mark II is a full frame camera. That means it is the size of the sensor is exactly the same size as a 35 millimeter frame of film from the good old days when we were using film. A 35 millimeter film segment is the same size as a full frame sensor. So there are cameras out there that are crop sensors, and they are okay, they take good images, but they don't have as many pixels available to capture images as a full frame camera does. So some cameras are crop sensors, and a crop sensor camera looks like this. So this is a full frame camera, and this is a crop sensor camera. They look almost exactly the same, right? Except for the lenses are different. This one is a Canon 5D, and this one, the crop sensor camera, is a Canon 7D. This is a Canon 7D Mark I. It's the original Canon 7D that Canon came out with. I think this one came out in 2011 or so. So with a crop sensor camera, same thing happens. Single lens reflex. The image comes through the lens, hits the mirror. When you hit the shutter button, the mirror moves out of the way, and then the image hits the sensor. But what happens then with a crop sensor camera is that this is smaller. You see how that's smaller than on the Canon 5D. The Canon 5D has a bigger sensor. That in this instance, so when I hit the shutter button on the 7D, you see the sensor is cropped. It's smaller. So you're only getting the center of the image that you would, but on a full frame camera, you get the entire image. So that's what happens when you have a crop sensor camera. You don't get the entire image, and you only get the center of it. And what happens when you just get the center of the image? You are essentially zooming in to what is available for the camera to see. So you're just getting the center portion. So essentially what happens is your lenses, if this was a 50 millimeter lens, it suddenly becomes like a 60 or 70 millimeter lens, because it's that cropped effect is zooming into the image. So other cameras that you could use for your for this class is, as we said before, the DSLM camera. The DSLM camera is a little bit different in that it doesn't have all those mechanics inside that the DSLR camera has. The DSLM camera is a little bit smaller. It's probably a little bit more lightweight. It's newer technology, and it's really great at resolving images at really low light. One of the disadvantages about a DSLM camera is that it's really hard to see in sunlight through the viewfinder, because you're looking at an electronic image that is being translated through the sensor and onto a screen that you're looking at through the viewfinder. Same goes for the screen on the back. On a DSLM camera, the screen on the back can be a little difficult to see in bright sunlight, so just be aware of that. The advantages is that they take fantastic photos. They are very high resolution, lots of pixels in order to capture your images. They're just a little difficult to see in bright sunlight. They're lighter weight, and they are a little smaller. So just keep that all in mind when you're selecting the camera that you want to use for this class. Like I said, you could probably find a used Canon 5D full frame camera for not a lot of money from like 10 years ago. They go now for like $300 or $400. A brand new one, a Canon 5D Mark IV, probably goes for like $2,600. I wouldn't recommend spending all that money on a brand new camera. Probably a good idea to try a used one when you're just learning. So let me know if you have any questions about that, and we'll see you at the next lesson.